During World War II, the German intelligence services kept a close eye on America's industrial capabilities. They knew that if the United States could mobilize its factories, the war might be lost. Yet even the most seasoned spies were stunned when they learned that Ford Motor Company, famous for cars like the Model T, was building the world's most complex aircraft, the B-24 Liberator, at a speed no one thought possible. This is the story of how American industry transformed, how Ford built a 1.5 million part bomber every 63 minutes, and why it shocked Germany's military planners. The B-24 Liberator, a giant of the skies. The consolidated B-24 Liberator was one of the most important heavy bombers of World War II. It carried more bombs, flew farther, and was faster than the famous B-17 Flying Fortress. But it was also a nightmare to build. Each B-24 was made up of about 1.5 million individual parts and required 313,000 different tools, jigs, and gauges. Compared to building cars, this was like assembling a moving city in the sky. By 1941, America needed thousands of these bombers to fight on multiple fronts. The question was, who could possibly build them fast enough? Ford enters the war. Henry Ford had revolutionized car production with the moving assembly line in 1913. His factories could turn out millions of cars, but aircraft were far more complicated. At first, many in the government doubted Ford could adapt, yet Ford's son, Edsel, and legendary engineer Charles Sorensen believed otherwise. They promised the government that Ford would mass-produce bombers, just as it had produced cars. The chosen site was Willow Run, a massive new factory in Michigan. Built in open farmland, Willow Run was the largest factory under a single roof at the time, eventually stretching a mile long. Building the arsenal of democracy, Willow Run became the heart of America's wartime production miracle. Inside, Ford introduced assembly line methods to bomber construction. Instead of hand-building aircraft in small numbers, as other companies did, Willow Run moved parts along giant lines. Each worker specialized in a task, just like in car factories. At first, things went badly. Early planes took months to finish, and Ford faced ridicule. But Sorensen reorganized the process step by step. By 1944, Willow Run was rolling out a completed B-24 every 63 minutes, a pace that seemed impossible just a few years earlier. This was more than speed. It was volume. Willow Run produced over 8,600 Liberators, while other plants added thousands more. In total, more than 18,000 B-24s were built, making it the most produced bomber in history. A workforce like no other. The miracle of Willow Run wasn't just machines, it was people. Tens of thousands of workers, many of them women replacing men who had gone to war, filled the factory floors. Known as Rosie the Riveters, these women drilled, welded, and riveted the bombers into shape. For many, it was their first industrial job. The factory ran day and night. Trains delivered raw materials, while finished bombers rolled straight onto airfields beside the plant. Test pilots could fly them directly into service. The sheer coordination amazed observers. It was as if an entire city had been built to produce one product, the B-24. German shock and fear German spies and analysts tried to measure American production. At first, they dismissed the idea that bombers could be built like automobiles, but by 1943, Luftwaffe commanders were seeing swarms of B-24s over Europe. German reports admitted that America's arsenal of democracy was beyond anything they had imagined. They calculated the manpower and resources needed to build a single bomber in Germany. The idea of completing one every hour seemed absurd, yet Ford was doing exactly that. The shock was not only in numbers, but also in quality. Despite being mass-produced, the B-24s were reliable and deadly, dropping millions of tons of bombs on Axis targets. The impact on the war. The speed of American bomber production overwhelmed Germany's defenses. B-24s played a critical role in strategic bombing campaigns, striking oil refineries, factories, and rail networks. They also hunted U-boats in the Atlantic, protecting convoys that kept Britain supplied. Without Willow Run and Ford's assembly line methods, the Allies might not have had enough planes to dominate the skies. Every 63 minutes, another giant of war was born, and every one of them pushed Germany closer to defeat. Legacy of Willow Run. After the war, production at Willow Run slowed and eventually ended. The factory later built cars and other equipment, but its legacy was clear. It proved that America's industrial power could turn the tide of global conflict. The B-24 itself was retired by the 1950s, replaced by newer jets. Yet its story remains a symbol of what happens when innovation, determination, and massive resources come together. German spies were right to be shocked. In a single factory, America had turned the dream of mass-produced heavy bombers into reality, and in doing so, it had helped win the war. Closing reflection. The story of Ford's B-24 production is more than a tale of machines. It is a reminder of how quickly the impossible can become possible. When the world needed it most, an automobile company built the most advanced bomber of its time at the unbelievable pace of one every 63 minutes. It was not just a feat of engineering. It was proof that in the battle of industry, America could outbuild its enemies, and that perhaps more than anything else, sealed the fate of Nazi Germany.